Hello guys and welcome to another bullet journal setup here on my channel. I decided to try something different for my bullet journal for August, so today we're going to be planning my August bullet journal setup together. For some reason, June, July, and August, and maybe September are probably the hardest months for me to choose a theme in my bullet journal, so this time I took advantage of my social presence and I asked you on TikTok and Instagram what themes you would like to see from me in August. I received a bunch of ideas. Some of them I saved for other themes, some of them I saved for next year's themes, but I decided to pick one that I saw on Instagram, which was 60 psychedelic. In 8 years of bullet journaling, I've never done a 60s theme. I've never done like a decades theme type of thing in my bullet journal, so I decided to try something different this time, and I'm going to do a 60s psychedelic theme in my bullet journal. I plan to do more of these games on Instagram and TikTok, so make sure you follow me there. I post a lot of things nowadays there. This is how the theme turned out, and as promised, I'm going to give the person that suggested for me to make this theme for August a $20 gift card to spend on my shop. And with that being said, let's create the 60 psychedelics theme together.
Okay, so when I was searching for inspiration on Pinterest to do this theme, I noticed that a lot of the 60s psychedelic aesthetic is based on these wavy lines, and I wanted to do that same effect for my bullet journal, but not with markers. I've seen 60s bullet journal themes made with markers, and they all look streaky and very basic, and I really wanted my theme to pop up and have bright colors. So instead of painting with markers or with watercolors or gouache or whatever onto my bullet journal, I actually used this technique that I tried when I was planning this theme, where I would draw all the wavy lines on some colored paper. And as you can see, I'm going to use 6 different colors here and just do those wavy lines, and then with scissors cut the wavy lines on the paper, and then you have these colors and these shapes that all mix match together. This process, I think it was a little bit tedious to do at the beginning of the theme because I had to draw all the lines and cut everything and put the shapes together to make sure that I had the same piles of the same shape separated from each other so they wouldn't mix with the other shapes, if that makes sense. So that was the hard part to do, and to make sure that all the shapes are cut the same way, because I just used clips to put the paper together, but these were not perfectly aligned, so the shapes are also not perfect. But in the end, I ended up with multiple different shapes of these wavy lines, and they all mix match with each other and they fit each other perfectly, and that was the goal with this technique. If you don't want to use that much paper and want to cut all of these and just want some wavy lines, you can do this with markers, but for me, this technique worked perfectly. So when I had everything cut out, I decided to start adding the shapes onto the page to create the same pattern that I did in pencil on the paper, but now cut up with different colors on my bullet journal. I tried to be as random as I could for the colors, so this is not in a particular pattern. I just tried to not put warm colors together so they would have a little bit of this psychedelic vibe to them. And in this theme, I'm going to use a lot of glue and paper because I'm so into junk journal and scrapbooking that this is what makes sense to me to do in my bullet journal. In July, for my theme for July, I actually did a lot of junk journal in watercolors, but for some reason, it was not matching with my vibe at the moment. This type of theme matches with my vibe a lot more because it's just gluing paper together and doing some type of scrapbooking, and this is what I like to do in all of my journals now. If you watched my latest video, you know that I use 4 different journals, and 2 of them is my junk journal and the other one is my bullet journal. And even though they sound similar, I use them for different things, and having a junk journal really changed my life creativity wise because I'm so much more stress free when it comes to creating things in my bullet journal. I don't overplan anything, and I feel like my art works a lot better this way because I don't overthink nor overplan. And you will see throughout this theme that the shapes, even though they fit together perfectly, there are some white spaces between them sometimes, and this is because of the crease of the notebook. So when you glue an A4 size shape into your notebook, even though you glue them perfectly, the crease in the middle is going to be a challenge. And so I was very careful when gluing the paper onto my bullet journal, but honestly it was really hard because of the crease in the middle. So I tried my best, but there's some white parts between the shapes, and for me that is totally fine. I am not a perfectionist in that aspect. If I wanted this to be perfect, I would just print out these shapes and glue the whole page into my bullet journal, but I wanted to do this in a more personal and crafty way. So there are mistakes and there are imperfections in my bullet journal, but for me, that is totally fine. That is what makes my bullet journal handmade and perfect in their own way. And since I created this whole pattern of wavy lines for the cover page that actually got the full background in my bullet journal for my cover page, I didn't want to cut any more paper to put on top. So I just did this quick title on Canva. I just wrote August in this very groovy retro type of lettering, and I did it orange because most of the things that I saw related to 60s psychedelic were orange and had this type of color palette for the titles. So I did the same thing for my August title, and for the page next to my cover page is actually going to be my mood board. I did that for July, and I really enjoyed the idea of having a mood board for the month, even though I don't look at these pages throughout the month as much. But I really wanted to have a mood board that would match the 60s psychedelic theme. So first of all, I just wanted to write mood board on that page, and I used some letters from my junk letter box to do this because the letters are all funky, all different, all colorful, and I thought it would match perfectly with this theme. And then I found this picture of little trinkets in a pharmacy magazine that I found last week, and I was saving it for the perfect rainbow junk journal page. But one thing with junk journaling is that there is never a perfect time to use a certain picture or sticker or washi tape. You just find an opportunity to use it and use it. And I have sticker anxiety. I have multiple stickers that I don't use because I feel like I'm going to use them now, but maybe in the future I'm going to have a better reason to use them. And so I don't use them now, and that is completely wrong and awful to me. So with junk journaling, you're kind of forced to use the things that you have and not waste time in using them in pages. So that's what I did for this page. And then I used other type of junk that I had in my folder, and I added some 60s inspired stickers that I had laying around in my sticker box. This is a very simple mood board, but I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I think it matches well with the vibe of this theme. Next up, we are moving on into my monthly dashboard, and in this page, I decided that I didn't want to have the wavy lines to be the whole background for this page, so I just did 3 sections of wavy lines, and then I'm going to glue some paper on top to kind of block those areas, if that makes sense. So instead of gluing everything and then cutting around the actual shape of the boxes, I'm just going to place some paper on top and call it a day. I think it's way easier this way, so that's what I did. And I even printed a little A to add to this page to kind of tie it together with the whole theme, because this is the only page that doesn't have that orange groovy theme that I showed you in the cover page. So on my left page, I'm going to have my monthly calendar, and if you've been following my channel for at least since January, you know that I love this type of calendar. It's just a skinny one, very vertical, and I'm going to highlight the weekends with a lilac zebra brush pen because this is the type of calendar that works for me. I don't know what it is, and I feel like for some people, just having a line for each day in their calendar does not work, but for me, it's actually good that I have small space for all the events in a month. I don't know what it is, but I really like this type of layout for a calendar, so I did it again, and I did a border around it with a Crayola super tip because Crayola super tips actually have a point tip where you can press down on paper and it becomes thicker. So that was the whole idea that I wanted to do for this types of boxes. So that's what I did for this one. I used orange, and for the other two I'm going to use green and blue. And this is going to be my calendar for the month. I know that it's pretty simple, but for me it's what works, so I'm really happy with how it turned out. And then on the page next to it, I'm going to have a section for tasks that is going to include all my to-do lists for the month, things that I have to do, any miscellaneous tasks, whatever needs to get done, it's going to be on this box. And then the box below is going to be for all my projects. So I realized in July that I have multiple projects going on now that I'm doing freelancing and content creation, and I have other things going on, that I need a safe space to add all of my projects to a little list. And creating a simple list was just a simpler option for me at the moment, where I just put in here all the projects that I'm working on and maybe stuff that I have to do for them and maybe due dates, and whatever it needs to get done throughout the month to complete these projects is going to be on here. And for the titles, I actually decided to add the junk letter box as the title because I think it matches well with the whole theme and with the mood board, so I use a small title for those boxes. And because this page had a lot of white spaces here and there, I decided to use some confetti stickers from lunar clouds to fill in those spaces. And some of them were actually too pale, so I ended up painting one yellow to really brighten up the page and not be a pale yellow on it. So I did that, and I added a flower child sticker next to the calendar to spice up more this 60s vibe on these pages. So even though these pages are super simple to set up, I'm really happy with how they turned out. Now, moving on into my last pages of the setup, I'm going to have a habit tracker and a bingo page. So for my habit tracker, I'm just going to have 5 mini calendars in here. This is the basic way to track your habits throughout the month, is to have mini calendars, each one for a habit that you want to track. And nowadays I track mainly the same 4 habits, and then I add an extra one every month depending on my life and what I have to do. So my habits are usually working out and taking walks, drinking water, meditation, and journaling. And depending on the month, I add marketing or I add taking creatine if I'm not really good at that. So those are the types of habits that I write in here. But I prefer to decide the actual habits that I'm going to take once the month starts. So I'm going to leave them blank for now. And I was really scared to do the bold black lines for each of the calendars because the 60s are not known for having thick black outlines on things. But when I was creating this page, that was what made sense to me. So that's what I did. And at first it sounded crazy and it looked bad, but once the page was all created and with the bingo page on the right side, it all made sense and it actually looked really nice. And again, for these titles, I just wrote them on Canva and I printed them out and I glued them on the page. Simple as that. For my bingo page, I'm actually going to play a lot with self-care and things that I want to do for the month to just make me feel like, to just help me actually do those things and not forget about them. Because here's the thing, I always like to do some sort of self care throughout the month, but if I don't have a list of things that I want to do or do something to acknowledge my self care activities, I don't do it and I spend the whole day working. So, to avoid that, I decided to do a self care bingo for August. And in here, I'm going to have these little cutouts of movies and albums to listen to. I realized that a lot of things from the 60s get lost in time. I really wanted to decide on 3 movies to watch from the 60s and 3 albums to listen to throughout the month of August and put them in here and see if I like them or not. And how this works is if I watch that movie or listen to that album, I just put a cross on top until I make a bingo with this page. And then the other squares, I'm going to add other activities that I want to do. But to also spice things up a little bit, I found this picture of a bunch of like pop art and 60s inspired flower pattern, and I print them out and I cut them into the little squares and I add them into the bingo as well. And this is just to add more color to the bingo card because I'm going to just cross everything out with a black marker. But I thought it would add a little more pop of color once the bingo is done. The activities on these squares don't mean anything and are not harder to do or anything, so it's just simply for aesthetics. And I cut some of them in here and I put them in the big old page, and I tried to be as random as possible, but once I looked at the whole picture, it didn't look random at all. So yeah, I added here a bunch of activities, and you can see this bingo as like a bucket list for summer or something like that. So the activities that I added in here are things that we already did or that we want to try, or some fun things that we can do throughout the summertime that we haven't done yet. So I add them in here so I can just look at them and remind my husband that, oh, we can go paddling, or we can try karaoke and go bowling, or maybe just eat some ice cream at the park, something like that. And we actually do those things. We work a lot from home, so it can be a little hard to go out and actually do things outside the house. So this page is mainly to remind me of that and make sure that we do some activities while it's still summertime. And those are all the pages that I did for the month of August in my bullet journal. I'm really happy with how this theme turned out and how colorful it is. I'm really happy that you guys suggested this theme, otherwise I would never have done it. So thank you so much for watching. Comment a peace or a rainbow emoji if you watched the video until this point, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye guys!